It has been under sanctions for over 40 years. Blocked from buying American weapons. Locked out of Russian technology. Cut off from European supply chains. Most nations would have a degraded military. Iran built a different one, its own. Welcome back to Armored Geeks. I'm your host, and today we're diving deep into one of the most misunderstood, most underestimated, and frankly, one of the most fascinating military arsenals on the planet. Iran, the Islamic Republic, ranked 16th in global military power, not despite 4 decades of international pressure, but in some ways because of it. Today, we're going through the machines, the tanks, the missiles, the drones, the ships, that define what Iran actually is as a military power in 2026. And along the way, we're going to talk about why any of this matters right now, with 2 US carrier strike groups sitting in the Arabian Sea. Let's get into it. Before we get to the hardware, you need to understand the context, because without it, you'll miss why any of this is impressive. In 1979, Iran's military was built almost entirely on Western hardware. American F-14 Tomcats, British Chieftain tanks, European naval platforms. It was one of the most well-equipped non-NATO forces on Earth. Then, the revolution happened. Western arms dried up overnight. Then came the Iran-Iraq War, 8 years of brutal attritional combat that consumed Iran's stock of foreign equipment faster than it could be replaced. Then decades of international sanctions. No buying from the US. Heavy restrictions on Russia. European embargoes. UN arms bans. So what did Iran do? It built its own. Since 1993, Iran has domestically manufactured its own tanks, its own armored personnel carriers, its own submarines, its own missiles, its own drones, and even its own fighter jets. Now, some of that is genuinely impressive engineering. Some of it is cobbled together Soviet-era knockoffs. And some of it, and this is the part that should make you sit up, is actually world-class. Let's go through it, category by category. Let's start on the ground with Iran's armor. And right up front, Iran's tank force is enormous. We're talking around 1,500 main battle tanks in total, which puts it in the same conversation as countries like Turkey, Egypt, and South Korea. But it's not the numbers that are interesting. It's the story behind how Iran got here. The Karar is Iran's most modern, domestically produced main battle tank. And it is genuinely impressive. Unveiled in 2016 and expanded in service since, it features a 125mm smoothbore gun with an autoloader, so you only need a 3-man crew instead of 4. Its fire control system shows strong Russian T-90 influence, and it carries composite armor with explosive reactive armor panels. Now, Western analysts are skeptical of some Iranian capability claims. And that's fair. But what the Karar represents strategically is more important than its spec sheet. Iran can design, develop, and manufacture its own main battle tank. That is not a small thing. Even more iconic is the Zulfikar, Iran's first truly homegrown tank design. And it's a fascinating piece of Cold War engineering archaeology. Iran reverse-engineered the American M48 and M60 tanks it had purchased before the revolution, blended Soviet suspension and gun technology in, and came out with something uniquely Iranian. 3 variants now exist, each progressively more capable. It is, and I mean this as a compliment, a Frankenstein tank. And it works. But the real backbone of Iran's armor core is the T-72. About 480 of them are produced domestically under license. Iran doesn't just operate these tanks, it manufactures them inside its own borders. Add in 540 T-54/55 essays and Chinese Type 59 derivatives, and you have a tank force that, while not cutting edge, is deep, sustainable, and indigenous. For a land war in the mountains and deserts of the Middle East, that matters. Okay, now we get to the part of this episode where I want your full attention, because if you came here for tanks, great. Hope you enjoyed that section. But if you want to understand Iran as a military power, if you want to understand why the US and Israel take this country seriously, despite sanctions, despite the aging Air Force, despite everything, this is the section. Iran's missile forces are the crown jewel of its entire defense doctrine. The Center for Strategic and International Studies has called it the largest and most diverse ballistic missile arsenal in the Middle East. Full stop. The Khorramshahr 4 is Iran's most powerful operational ballistic missile. Liquid-fueled, 2,000-kilometer range, with a warhead reportedly weighing up to 2 tons, 2,000 kilometers. That puts Israel, all US bases in the Gulf, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and parts of Europe within reach. And analysts note it could reach even further with a lighter warhead. It flies on a Road Mobile Transporter Erector Launcher, a TEL. What does that mean? It means you can't pre-target it. It drives out of its hardened underground base, sets up, fires, and moves before anyone can respond. And then there's the Fatah, Iran's hypersonic missile program. In 2023, Iran unveiled the Fatah series, claiming speeds up to Mach 15, 15 times the speed of sound, with a range of 1,400 to 2,000 kilometers. In June 2025, it was tested in actual combat during the Iran-Israel war. Here's why hypersonics matter in plain English. Most air defense missiles are designed to intercept targets flying predictable trajectories at high altitudes. A hypersonic glide vehicle doesn't do that. It skips along the upper atmosphere, changes direction mid-flight, and arrives before most systems can respond. Iran's hypersonic program is not at the level of Russia or China, but it doesn't need to be. It needs to be good enough to create uncertainty in Israeli and American targeting calculus. And by all accounts, it does. One more thing on missiles that I think gets undersold in Western coverage. Iran has built what it openly calls missile cities, vast underground complexes, tunneled into mountains, housing dozens of ballistic missiles on mobile launchers. The IRGC has shown these on state television deliberately. It's a deterrence message. In the June 2025 war, Israel struck 19 out of 25 major missile bases. But satellite analysis afterward concluded that the above-ground damage was largely cosmetic. Assets stored in underground tunnels survived almost completely. By February 2026, those same bases are being rebuilt with new hardened concrete shields and buried tunnel entrances. Iran's missile deterrent is reconstituting itself faster than most analysts expected. If missiles are Iran's crown jewel, drones are its most globally impactful export. And that sentence should give you pause. The Shahed 136, the iconic Iranian one-way attack drone, the so-called kamikaze drone, has become one of the most significant weapons in the world right now. Not because it's technologically advanced, but because it's cheap, mass-producible, and devastatingly effective at scale. Russia has launched over 38,000 Iranian-designed Shahed drones against Ukraine. Iran established a full production line inside Russia at the Alabuga industrial zone, with a capacity of 10,000 units per year. Think about what that tells you about Iran's manufacturing capability. Not just that they build drones, but that they can export a full industrial production process for drone warfare. In February 2025, Iran commissioned the Iris Shahed Bagheri, its first operational drone carrier. And this thing is fascinating. It's a converted merchant vessel with a 180-meter runway, 8 drone hangars across 2 decks, fuel stations, a hospital, and a football pitch. It deploys Ababil, Mahajer, and Homer attack and reconnaissance drones. Now, compare it to a US Nimitz-class carrier. There is no comparison in terms of raw power. But that's not the point. The Shahed Bagheri extends Iran's drone strike range from the Persian Gulf into the Indian Ocean. It is a power projection asset, not a fleet carrier. And it's the first of its kind Iran has ever had. Iran's navy is not trying to be the US Navy. Let's be clear about that from the start. What it is trying to do, what it has deliberately designed itself to do, is control or threaten one of the most strategically critical choke points on Earth. The Strait of Hormuz. 21 miles wide at its narrowest, 20% of the world's oil supply flows through it. Iran's naval doctrine is built around a single strategic premise. If you attack us, we can make the global economy feel pain. Unveiled in 2025 exercises, the Haydar 110 is Iran's latest fast attack catamaran. The IRGC claims it's the fastest catamaran in the world at 110 knots. That's over 200 kilometers per hour. And it can carry 2 cruise missiles. Now, a single speedboat is not going to threaten a carrier strike group, but hundreds of them swarming simultaneously, combined with anti-ship mines, shore-based missiles, and submarines in shallow water. That's a very different calculation. In the IRGC's secret underground naval base on Iran's southern coast, which state television has shown publicly, again as a deliberate deterrence message, hundreds of these missile-carrying speedboats are lined up and ready. And then there's the Qadr 380 anti-ship cruise missile, unveiled in early 2025. Range: over 1,000 kilometers. What that means is Iran can target ships in the Arabian Sea from inside its own territory without ever putting a sailor in harm's way. Iran also claims it has a new supersonic anti-ship cruise missile with a 2,000-kilometer range still being formally unveiled. If that's accurate, it fundamentally changes the threat calculus for any naval force operating in the region. Iran operates around 25 submarines total. Most are small coastal and midget submarines, Ghadir class and Fateh class, designed specifically for the Persian Gulf's shallow, congested waters. These are not deep ocean hunter-killers. They're designed to be the quietest, most persistent threat in an environment where conventional US anti-submarine warfare tactics are less effective. Iran has also developed its own domestically produced torpedo, the Valfaja, tested from these submarines in 2025 exercises. Air defense is where Iran has arguably made its most underrated investment, and it's directly relevant to everything happening right now. After Israel claimed in late 2024 to have destroyed all 4 of Iran's Russian S-300 air defense batteries, there was a lot of commentary about Iran being left defenseless in the sky. Tehran pushed back hard, and when the Bava 373 appeared in live drills in January 2025 alongside the S-300, it sent a clear message. The Bava 373 is Iran's top high-altitude surface-to-air missile system, entirely domestically developed. It's reportedly capable of engaging targets at ranges beyond 300 kilometers using the Sayyad 4B missile. Iran needed an S-400 equivalent. It couldn't buy one, so it built one. Is it equivalent to a Russian S-400 or American Patriot in electronic sophistication? Probably not. But that's not the point. The point is Iran can produce, deploy, and maintain a long-range air defense system without external supply chains. When sanctions take out a battery, Iran can build another one. After the June 2025 war, rebuilding that air defense umbrella, specifically its radar networks and SAM coverage, has been cited as Iran's most urgent military priority. We have to talk about the Air Force, because it is, without question, Iran's most significant military weakness, and Iran knows it. Iran operates around 250 combat-capable aircraft. But here's the catch. A huge chunk of that fleet is American. F-4 Phantoms and F-14 Tomcats bought before 1979. These are over 50 years old. Spare parts have been under embargo for 4 decades. Keeping them flying is an engineering miracle, and also a sign of how hard it is to replace them. The modern backbone of Iran's Air Force is Russian MiG-29s, supplemented by domestically produced jets like the Psyche and Azarakh, which are themselves derived from the American F-5 Tiger. Iran has been trying to get Russia's Su-35's fighters for years. According to leaked documents, a deal is in place. Russia is expected to supply 48 Su-35s as partial payment for Iran's drone manufacturing support. If those aircraft arrive, It would be the single biggest upgrade to Iranian air power in decades. But until they do, Iran's air force remains the branch least equipped to survive a direct confrontation with the United States. The doctrine reflects this. Iran does not plan to win an air war with the US. It plans to make an air war against Iran cost more than it's worth. So let's zoom out. Because all of this hardware exists in a very specific context right now. And as of February 2026, that context is extremely tense. In June 2025, a 12-day war between Iran and Israel ended, with the United States directly bombing 3 of Iran's nuclear sites: Ford Au, Natanz, and Isfahan. It was called Operation Midnight Hammer. B-2 stealth bombers, bunker-busting GBU-57 bombs, Tomahawk missiles from a submarine. Iran responded by striking the Al Udeid US Air Base in Qatar. No deaths, widely seen as a deliberate face-saving move. A ceasefire was declared. The war ended, but it didn't go away. As of this recording, the United States has 2 aircraft carrier strike groups in the Arabian Sea, the USS Abraham Lincoln and the USS Gerald R. Fayed. Trump has issued Iran a 10 to 15-day ultimatum to agree on a nuclear deal. Iran has been running IERGC exercises in the Strait of Hormuz, temporarily closing the waterway to commercial shipping. IRGC gunboats attempted to seize a US tanker. A US F-35 shot down an Iranian drone approaching the Abraham Lincoln. Satellite imagery shows Iran rebuilding its bombed missile bases with new hardened concrete shields and buried tunnel entrances. The missile program is reconstituting, and senior Iranian military officials are now openly stating that any new US military strike will not be geographically contained, that American naval assets and bases throughout the Middle East would be legitimate targets. Here's the strategic reality that Iran's entire arsenal is built around. Iran is not trying to win a war against the United States. It is trying to make starting one unacceptably expensive. Every missile city, every Haydar 110 speedboat in the Strait of Hormuz, every Shahed drone rolling off a production line, every hardened underground base, they all serve the same function. They are the price tag. They are Iran saying, if you hit us, here is what it costs. Whether that doctrine holds in 2026, whether the diplomacy in Geneva produces a deal or the military pressure produces another strike, we don't know yet. What we do know is what the machines look like. And now, so do you. That's a wrap on Iran's military arsenal, from the Karar tank rolling out of a domestic factory in Isfahan to a Khorramshahr 4 ballistic missile buried under a mountain in the IRGC's missile cities. What strikes me every time I look at this stuff isn't the individual specs, it's the sheer determination behind it. Iran built all of this because it had to. And in doing so, it created something that even its adversaries have to take seriously. If you found this useful, smash that subscribe button. We go deep on this stuff every week. Drop your questions in the comments and let us know what you want us to cover next. We'll consider your inputs. I'm your host, this is Armored Geeks, and I'll see you in the next one.